Hello, it's Tuesday afternoon at 3:05. Shocker, it's not Wednesday, people. So we're going to finish up these notes. I wanted to do this right after school today so I could get this posted so that you could look at it straight away tomorrow before you take your test. Remember, you have until 11:59. Please don't wait until the last minute and then email me and tell me all these sad stories about why you couldn't do it. Okay, quit messing with my hair. Okay, so we finished Italy on page 11. Fascist legacy, make sure that you know that. Italian democracy will be destroyed. It will not recover. There will not be any ways that it can recover. Terrorism becomes a state policy. So the citizens of Italy live in terror, all right? That they're not allowed to speak out. The things that they read, things that they watch, things that they hear are all dictated by the state. Poor industrial growth due to militarism and colonialism. That's another difference that we didn't look at very closely between totalitarianism and absolutism. Absolutists weren't, I'm sorry, communist and fascist. Communists were not about building an empire or imperialization. Both the fascist nations, Germany and Italy, wanted colonies, and we'll talk about that on Thursday with Mussolini's first colony that he picks. All right, so now we're on to Nazi Germany. A lot of this we got in our last look at democracies because Germany started as a democracy and then all these things happened to move it towards Hitler and Nazism and fascism. The roots of Nazism is extreme nationalism and racism. Those two things together give us Nazism. And it is a hyper nationalistic impulse. And that impulse is to conquer everyone else. Why? Because they aren't as good as we are. So that's that German Third Reich. That's that German Aryan nation type of thing, that we are better than you. We should be in charge. We should have domination over you and everyone else. Racist ideas, racial superiority of the Aryan race. These are the Germanic people, right? Not everyone, just these Germanics. And definitely have a set of inferior races, and that would be Jews and Slavs. And Slavs are Russians, Slavs are Serbians, Balkan, anybody on that Balkan Peninsula, Greeks, all of those Eastern European are Slavs. So the rise of Hitler, I think we kind of discussed this again when we were looking at the democracies. He becomes leader of the Nationalist Socialist German Worker Party, or the Nazis. It's a very tiny group, starts with 7 people. He gets his paramilitary troop, which are the SA. They are the brown shirts. They are a group of paramilitary. So when we say paramilitary, it means people that are not in the military that think they are, and they walk around with their own little uniforms and their own weapons and their own little system of the way they operate. They have nothing to do with a state military, but they create this fake little military that they run and govern. And what they do with that fake military is usually terrorize the population. And that's what these brown shirts do. In effect, these brown shirts are a private army of the Nazis, in particular, private army to Nazis who are loyal to Hitler. And that, again, is where that will be really important. We talked about the Wehrhauptputsch in 1923 and the fact that Hitler commits treason against his country, Bavaria, and receives 1 year in jail. And in jail, he writes Mein Kampf. And on page 12, we talked about it in our other set of notes, but on page 12, we really get in depth into Mein Kampf, and you need to know these things. Mein Kampf means my struggles. And again, it's his struggles as a white Aryan in his own country. And again, that appeals to this racist mentality and this nationalistic mentality that somehow in Germany, these white nationalist Germans are somehow being discriminated against. So he writes this while he's in jail, and it becomes the blueprint for Hitler's future plans. The first thing is Lebensraum, which is a living space. Germans need a big Germany. We need to have all the spaces that we need to grow our nation. And for it to be our nation, we need to get everybody out. Jews out, Slavs out, and if necessary, turn them into slaves. He writes this in the book. It's not a shock. It's not new. He writes it down in a book that's published for everyone to read. He is very anti-Semitic. Hitler blamed the Jews for everything. And why does that work? Again, as we discussed in class, when a group of people are looking for reasons to why things are not working in their country, it's much easier to blame. It's much easier to say it's their fault than to actually try to figure out how to fix it or to accept blame in other different places. So Jews were blamed for everything. And obviously they didn't do those things, all of them by themselves, but they become the easy target. The leader and the dictator, the Fuhrer, would have unlimited arbitrary power, random power at any time, whatever I want to do. We'll also add with the idea of what happens to Jews in Germany. One of the biggest things, and people, again, that don't study history, why didn't the Jews leave? It was their home. And they thought this, again, was like many other types of governments that were far right or far left, that eventually it'll right itself back and everything will go back to normal. So the extremists had come and gone, and Jews had not been subjected to any other kind of trouble in Germany. So for the most part, Jews thought that this was just a trend, this was just a phase, and eventually the ship, meaning the German government, would right itself and everything would be okay. And this is my country. So that, again, is part of that issue. So what happens to change all that is the Great Depression. Unemployment reaches 43% in Germany. Of the global depression, the country hit the worst will be Germany. It is tremendous in Germany. 43% of the population is unemployed by the end of 1932. And when that happens, you have economic chaos. You have a country on the verge of collapse. And so all of this plays into Hitler's plan. And that's the reason, spoiler alert, when we end World War II, that we can't leave Germany destroyed again. Because what will happen is somebody will sweep in to save the day, to put the blame on everything else, to say they can fix it, and the crowd is willing to believe that. And that's what happens with Hitler. He is an excellent speaker. He is not smart. He is not intelligent. He is not a genius. He never had an IQ test. All those things you hear on those conspiracy TV shows and everything else. He's not smart. He's pretty dumb. But what he can do is speak. He is a great orator, meaning the speeches that other people write for him, he does well in the delivery. So Hitler begins promising all these things. I'm going to promise you military salvation, economic salvation, and he's very convincing. He promises big business that they would restore the economy by breaking the labor movements and reducing workers' wages. This is the problem. The workers are making too much money. Hitler assured top army leaders that the Nazis would reject the Treaty of Versailles. What's another reason that we're in this Great Depression? The Treaty of Versailles. Right? And Hitler says, I'm not going to honor it. You vote for me. I am not going to honor that. Nazis also appealed to German youth. And again, for the youth, they are again seeing this pessimistic future. What is there for me? Unemployment is 43%. I don't have a future. Who can help me? This guy, Adolf Hitler. He's promising me a place. And I can understand what he's talking about. He's telling me who to blame, and it's not me. And that, again, fuels the fire and the flames of the Nazi Party. 1930, the Chancellor gained permission from the President for emergency rule by decree. Struggle between the Social Democrats and the Communists contributed to the breakdown. The Nazis are going to win the largest percentage of votes in the Reichstag, and that they will demand that Hitler play a role. And Hitler's going to become the Chancellor on January 30th, 1933, appointed by President Paul von Hindenburg. Now, remember we have, and I don't know if we did this DBQ, but we had a compare and contrast between Italian unification and German unification. We'll also have a compare and contrast of how Mussolini came to power and how Hitler came to power. Mussolini came to power by force. He marches his men onto Rome. He says, "King, give me the power or we're going to tear this place down." Hitler does it through political means. He uses all of the rules and regulations of the Bundestag to get elected to chancellor. Once he's chancellor, then all bets are off and he doesn't follow the rules. At the top of page 3, we get the Third Reich. So the Third Reich is the third realm of Germany, with the first one being Charlemagne, second one being Bismarck, and then the third one being Hitler. He quickly consolidates power. One of the ways he consolidates power is he perhaps starts a fire. Not sure who did it, but there's going to be a fire that's going to occur during a violent electoral campaign in 1933, and the Nazis immediately say the communists are trying to burn down the government. And everyone readily believes, easily readily believes, without really any proof. And so they use that as a propaganda tool that communists are trying to burn. So when they say that, what happens with the other groups is now we got to make sure that the communists don't come into power. And so these other groups are willing to work with the Nazis to keep the communists out of power. It's that old saying that politics makes for strange bedfellows. People have to be friends that would not normally be friends to get rid of a common enemy. And the common enemy are the communists. The SA will step up its terrorist attacks on political opponents. And then in 1933, the Enabling Act passed by the Reichstag gives Hitler absolute dictatorial power for 4 years. Now, we already saw that in Italy, right? We'll give you 1 year, Mussolini. Giving dictators a time limit is like trying to put out a fire with a sprinkler. Like, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You're not going to put that fire out with the garden hose. And you're not going to get rid of Adolf Hitler by giving him 4 years, because at the end of 4 years, he's not going to go away. Hitler now begins his ascent as a dictator. He outlaws strikes. He abolishes unions. Publishers, universities, writers are all brought into line. Here's what you're going to write. Here's what you're going to teach. Here's what you're going to publish. Any freedoms that were a part of any of the curriculum, what newspapers published, all of that's gone. Democrats, socialists, Jewish literature, blacklist. Don't publish them, can't read them. Students and professors burned forbidden books. So there's a list of forbidden books. Those of you that love the best movies in the world, Indiana Jones, you will recall the Indiana Jones where he is in Berlin and they're burning the books. And that's the beginning. Burn all these books. One of the first books that Hitler's going to burn is All Quiet on the Western Front. Modern art and architecture, prohibited. It is called degenerate. So all of our modern art, Picasso, Matisse, Van Gogh, all of that's going to be destroyed, burned. Brilliant works of art burned by Hitler and the Germans and the Nazis. Goebbels becomes the Minister of Propaganda. And again, in your country, if you have a title of someone called the Minister of Propaganda, you probably live in a dictatorship. He glorifies Hitler and the Nazi state. Leni Riefenstahl is a female. She is and makes a documentary, The Triumph of Will, documentary of Nuremberg Rally of 1934, was used by the regime as propaganda to make Hitler look larger than life and glorify. And she just falls right into goose step with that propaganda machine. So now we got this propaganda machine going. Hitler's in control, and now he's going to begin. One of his goals is to rid Germany of all Jews. One of the things I want to make sure that you understand, I think oftentimes when people hear that term final solution, they think that it came at the end of the war. Like this is the final thing that we're going to do. The final solution refers to this is the final solution to get rid of Jews. And this happens really early at the very beginning of the war. Meaning Hitler and a bunch of his upper cronies, they go for a long weekend at a very ritzy pitsy chateau in the countryside of Germany, and they all sit down and decide how they're going to kill 6 million people while they're eating a 7-course dinner. This is not something that was just at the end like, hey, now we got to kill all these people because the war's over. This started happening in the early part of the war, the 1940s and the 1940 and 1941. So please don't confuse final solution with what I think a lot of people think is, oh my gosh, we're at the end of the war. We got to hide all these things we're doing. Let's kill them. This was at the very beginning. So one of the ways is how do we round these up? And this is called the Night of Long Knives. Hitler was warned. Oh no, this is long knives. I'm sorry. Hitler was warned that the army and big business were suspicious. To please conservative, Hitler's elite guard arrested and shot about 1,000 SA leaders and other political armies. And now the SS joins the political police as the Gestapo. So that Gestapo becomes the secret police. The top of page 14, our big discussion today, the Hitler Youth. Nazis indoctrinated German youth with views of racial superiority and Jews as the source of all of Germany's problem. Eventually, membership in the Hitler Youth becomes mandatory. You cannot escape the Hitler Youth. This is an example of how totalitarian regimes demanded participation, right? So Louis XIV, he doesn't want anybody to participate in anything because he wants to control it all. Fascists say you have to participate. You have to be part of these government programs. Children were encouraged to turn in their teachers or their parents if they seemed disloyal. And this, again, begins the persecution of the Jews. By 1934, most Jewish lawyers, doctors, professors, civil servants had lost their jobs. Any professional job, any job that was intellectual or a profession, gone. And you cannot practice your profession. This is 1934. We haven't even fired a shot of World War II yet. In 1934, almost all professional Jews lost their ability to perform their occupation. Then we get the Nuremberg Laws of 1935, deprived Jews of all of their rights as citizens. They have no rights. Marriage or sex between Jews and other Germans prohibited. So if you in 1934 were German married to a Jew, in 1935, your marriage no longer existed. Jews could not hire German women under the age of 45 as domestic workers. Jews could not display the German flag. You don't get to have access to the flag. Jews could not use hospitals. You're not allowed to go to the hospital. You couldn't be educated past the age of 14. You could not go to a park. Libraries, beaches, can't. Most important, war memorials. Jewish names erased and removed. Those names are usually etched in marble. Removed, taken off. By 1939, 50% of Germany's 500,000 Jews had left. Again, these were the people that had access to money, that could see more clearly what was happening, the cream of the crop, as our notes say, and they were able to get out, and they left. Huge immigration fees and confiscation of Jewish property helped the government to finance all of these things. The Night of Broken Glass, Kristallnacht, is 1938. Hitler ordered an attack on all Jewish communities, using the assassination of a German diplomat in Paris by a Jewish boy as a pretense. Well-organized wave of violence destroyed homes, synagogues, and businesses, and that was the purpose, destruction, to destroy everything. Thousands of Jews will be arrested and made to pay for the damage that the Gestapo did. And then obviously at the bottom of the page is the Holocaust, 6 million European Jews. Again, please make note that we are talking about Jews, but also as this final solution would be lots of other different groups: gypsies, physically disabled, emotionally disabled, mentally disabled, homosexuals, Seventh-day Adventists, lots of way more than Jews, but obviously the Holocaust targeted Jews, but there were many more people put in concentration camps and killed and gassed and cremated besides Jews. At the top of page 15 is that big list: Slavs, Gypsies, Jehovah's Witnesses, communists, homosexuals, mentally handicapped, political opponents. Some of the largest groups of political opponents will be members of the Lutheran Church who refuse to allow German propaganda from their pulpits on Sunday. And they refuse to allow Hitler to nationalize their religion. And Mr. Bonhoeffer, again, Bonhoeffer is one of the most important heroes from this time period. His families are all Nazis, but he's a Lutheran priest and will not allow and will not preach the sermons that are written for him to say on Sunday by the Nazi Party. And he will die in a concentration camp probably about 2 or 3 months before Germany is liberated. So the German economy. Major reason for Hitler's soaring popularity is he delivered work or bread. He fixed the economy. Now, how he fixes it is a little weird, but again, people are willing to overlook things if they have food to eat, especially when they didn't have it before him. And they can directly say, I didn't have a job before Hitler, I didn't have food before Hitler, now I do. Large public works programs started to get Germany out of the Depression: superhighways, the Autobahn, offices, sports stadiums, public housing. In 1936, the Olympics were held in Berlin, and it was supposed to be this giant showcase of the Aryan nation, which I hope, spoiler alert, you know, that an African American named Jesse Owens won everything in front of Hitler. Wasn't very happy. That he had to preside over an Olympics that was won by many African Americans competing for the United States. Result of Nazi economic policies: unemployment dropped from 6 million to about 1 million. By 1938, shortages of workers will actually exist. Women will actually start to take jobs. 1938, the standard of living for the average worker increases and business profits start to rise. So how does Hitler hold on to this power when he's doing all these other things? The economy works. And that, again, sadly, is a major factor in deciding, do you support someone? You can forgive a lot of things if economically you and your family are doing well. So, Nazi society, was there really a social revolution? Well-educated classes held on to most of the advantages. Only a modest social leveling occurred. Like fascist Italy, women were viewed as housewives and mothers. Hitler implored German women to make babies for the Reich. Birth control information and abortions are forbidden for German women. They are not even allowed to have access to birth control. Although allowed for unwanted groups like Jews, Gypsies, and Slavs. We will give you people birth control, and we will give you abortions without your permission. We will actually sterilize you sometimes without your permission. Women were denied meaningful occupations, and only in wartime were large numbers of women mobilized for work. So that takes us to the end. We're getting ready to start World War II. We'll look at that on Thursday and Friday and practice some things on Friday, but this will be our last test tomorrow. So let me know if you have any questions, and I will talk to you on Thursday. Good luck on your test.